everyone, and welcome to this episode, the advice one, of the Women Talking About Learning podcast. I'm Andrew Jacobs. Throughout our lives, we are constantly given advice whether we want it or not. These are based on opinions, suggestions, or recommendations which tend to be offered to help in our decision making. Whether they help or not is another matter. So to discuss this further, we have three fabulous guests. Our first guest is Lorraine Taylor. With over 25 years' experience in L&D, Lorraine runs her own business advising organisations and individuals how to align people capabilities with business goals so teams can quickly adapt, lead effectively and deliver results. Alongside creating learning experiences that resonate and deliver ROI, she has spent much of her career coaching and mentoring others. She attributes her career success in part to the advice others have given her along the way. Paying it forward is a key part of her business ethos, including volunteering to help young adults from a low socioeconomic background find the career of their dreams. Our second guest is Georgie Smith. Georgie is a midlife and menopause coach who helps women who feel like they've lost themselves after years of looking after everyone else. Supporting women through identity shifts, confidence dips and life transitions, Georgie focuses on helping them reconnect with who they are now. Her work is rooted in self-trust, emotional awareness and creating a life that feels calm, clear and genuinely fulfilling. Our final guest is Katie O'Malley. Katie is an executive coach and leadership educator with 20 years of professional experience serving the non-profit, education and corporate sectors. Across these workplaces, Katie noticed her strengths and values consistently steered her towards the support and development of others. In 2012, Katie translated this observation into action, earning a master's degree in counselling and board certification in coaching. Recorded in April of 2026, this is Women Talking About Learning. This is Lorraine, Georgie and Katie talking about advice.
So we're here talking about advice today. Katie, I'm just interested, what advice did you take about podcasting before you came on today's podcast?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Lorraine. I started exploring podcasts in 2021 when a friend from high school just had posted on Facebook, I'm looking for folks who want to do podcasts. And my thought was she was starting her own, but in fact, she was starting a business to get people booked onto podcasts. And I ended up becoming her very first client and was also new to entrepreneurship myself. And so one of the biggest things that I learned from that experience early on in 2021 was that I really do have all of the knowledge that I need to be able to contribute effectively on a podcast without much preparation, as long as I'm clear on the topic, the goals, what it is the audience wants. So for me, preparation and the advice that I give to folks is do the things that make you feel most confident before you hop on to a podcast, an interview, a stage, into a coaching session. And for me, it is the morning here in Chicago, Illinois, getting a workout in on the Peloton, getting some good snuggle time and walk time in with my chief happiness officer, Foxy, the Golden Doodle, and then reviewing notes right before so that I can be super clear on what it is the podcast is looking for and what the audience is hoping to learn and receive. Georgie, what about you?
Very similar, actually. I worked with a coach last year, a fabulous coach who taught me about my zone of genius and reaching out to people to go on to podcasts with and for, and making me, she helped me realize I've always got something interesting and valuable to say and being confident in that. But you're absolutely right. The key is the preparation beforehand. It was about being calm, going into the situation calmly, but also that prep before. So having a conversation with the people that you're going to be involved with, knowing how it's going to run. So you're not coming in blind almost. Yeah, just that prep, but also having that confidence in yourself that there is something useful to be said, really useful. What about you, Lorraine?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, the advice that has stuck with me before coming onto the podcast was be yourself as much as you can and not to worry too much about it. You know, actually, there's a reason you're on the podcast, there's something that either you want to share or somebody wants you to share, and so therefore just go with it. And then I think also for me is just making sure that hopefully that the equipment is going to work, and for me, I mean, my chief happiness officer, Healy the mini schnauzer, is not very quiet, so I was told to make sure that he was nowhere near, just so that it didn't interrupt, and so on. So I think it's all those little preparation things so that you can just be yourself and share what is the most important thing to share.
Absolutely, not be distracted. Yeah, too right.
Yeah.
My chief happiness officer is also outside because he's not quiet either. So what does advice mean to each of us? Katie, what does advice mean to you?
Yeah, it's, for me, when I think about advice coming from being educated and trained as a therapist, we are told to resist advice giving at every turn, right? And so I think for me, advice kind of falls into two buckets. There's the advice that serves the person who's giving it, and there's
Mm,
advice that serves the person who's receiving it. And I think when we're on the receiving end of advice, having the ability to discern what is actually going to help me get to my goals and go where I want to go versus is this advice trying to get me to go in a direction that somebody else wants me to go. And it makes me think about a podcast I was invited to be on, and the podcaster was actually quite arrogant in a way that was pretty off-putting. And really at the start of that podcast, I was like, am I really going to do this? Right. And as we're going through, one of the things he wanted to do was talk about my upcoming TEDx talk. And on the podcast told me I had picked the wrong topic. I was going about it in the wrong way, that I
wow.
needed to be instead focusing my TEDx on women working in toxic work environments. And I'm sitting there being like, okay, I hear you, and trying to be polite and kind and professional, but in my mind and in my body was just filling up with anger and rage. And he had the nerve to pitch me on business. So once the podcast was done, to bring him in to do marketing. And I was like, what is even happening right now? And he ended up reaching out again after my TEDx was published, saying, this is not what we talked about you doing. And this is advice I didn't take, right? Because it didn't serve me or the audience I was trying to connect with, and the message I was trying to deliver to make a positive impact in the world.
That's really interesting, actually, because for me, it's advice, it's support, it's help, it's somebody wanting to put their views onto you and tell you how to do things. And to the question around, what does advice mean? I think that I've been in situations where I thought I was helping somebody, and they've actually
Mm,
taken it as unwanted advice. And then through my years in learning and development and working as a coach and doing all sorts of things, I've really sort of realized that actually advice is best when somebody wants it. And so asking for permission to share a comment, or, just share some background or some experience rather than just sharing it and just giving it. And I think for me, that's changed my definition of advice massively, because really, if people want to hear it, they'll probably ask for it anyway. And actually, where I maybe thought I was being helpful or advising, actually somebody else saw that as quite upsetting or annoying. And that's really changed for me what advice means and how best to either be a recipient of it or to give it.
Yeah. And Laureen, what I hear in that is the person who is receiving it has the most agency. And I think that's the important piece too. We get to decide what we do with it. And often I say, if you have to ask someone if you can give them feedback or advice, chances are you probably shouldn't be doing it.
the thing is,
Yeah,
no,
I mean,
not at all.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry, Georgie.
The thing is, though, it's it can be very difficult for people to ask for advice, can't it? And having the confidence to maybe use that discernment, because I agree with you entirely, Katie. There's a whole piece on discernment and knowing yourself well enough to know what's right for you, and not thinking, because there's a lot of women out there who are people pleasers and will think advice is a rule. Oh, I must go and do that, and not have that own discernment and not trust themselves enough. Because advice in its truest, purest form, it doesn't exist really, does it? I went right back to the beginning when I was sort of researching for today. Advice is one person offering a view on what they think might help, but there's always biases from the recipient and the giver, isn't there? There's biases on both ways, so it's really difficult to give it in that truest form. But giving it to someone who's is ready to receive it, if they're not able to ask for any reason, quite a difficult balance to find, isn't it? I think.
Definitely, definitely. And I also think, in terms of giving advice, and people being ready to hear it, I think it's also who's
Mm-mm.
who's giving you the
Yeah.
advice as well. And I think, especially on this point, as a woman in business, I think there are various different people who will give women advice for various different reasons and at different stages of your career. And I think that discernment, depending on your confidence, depending on the environments that you've worked in. And I've worked in a number of environments, some toxic, some amazing. And that really has an impact in terms of how you will take on that advice. Do you respect the person that's giving the advice? And all of that, for me, certainly in my career over the last however many years it's nearly 30, I think it is. It's come in different shapes and forms, and I've taken it on board in different shapes and forms, often based on where I am in my career and also the person giving it and what I believe is their rationale for giving that advice.
Yeah, I
Lorraine,
could.
oh, Georgie, go ahead.
So sorry. There's also the women as people pleasers thinking the advice is a rule, but there's also the times when we turn into a rebel and it's like, I don't like you. I'm just not here for that advice. You're just throwing the way you want things to be at me, and you rebel and you go completely the wrong way. And actually, that advice might have been really useful. You've got to be. I think it might have been you, Lorraine, who said you've got to be ready to hear it, haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
For both of you, have there been moments where you rebelled against advice, but it might have been beneficial for you to take it, to Georgie's point?
So many times. And that's the other thing with advice, isn't it? I find it can be overwhelming because everyone's got an opinion. And that's what advice is a lot of the time, isn't it? It's someone's opinion. And that advice might be right for them. And it might be seemingly really good advice, but it's very different from the advice you're getting from someone else and then from someone else. And it's overwhelming to the point where I go, I am listening to nothing. I am doing nothing. I'm just going to go off. And actually, that's not useful either, because there's going to be some bits of advice in there that are really, really useful. And again, I think for me personally, it comes down to trusting what feels right for me, listening to it and what feels right. And it's that again, that trust issue. So I'm rebelling against it all of the
Yeah.
time because I'm being told what to do all of the time and I don't like it very much.
Yeah, I think I agree so much in terms of the rebelliousness. And I think for me, it depends on if there's an emotional attachment as well. And I mean, taking it a little bit outside of work for now, but if you think about a family situation, if somebody in your family or a close friend gives you advice, for some reason, I seem to rebel against that more than maybe somebody in the work situation, whereby I feel that that's coming at it from a different perspective. Maybe it's because a manager or somebody at work has got some hard and fast, rules in terms of how to give feedback, how to share information. But actually, often it's the people that are closest to you that are probably going to give you the best advice. So there is something there in terms of the way it's given will either make me rebel or make me listen. And that might be tone, it might be style, it might be the person. But there have been times where I've been given advice, I've gone, absolutely not. And then maybe a day later, it's sort of, oh, hang on a minute, that was really useful. And actually, I've backtracked. And then it's almost like, do I have to go back to that person and apologize? Or do I just get on with it and take the advice and move on? And so there have been many times like that as well. What about for you, Katie?
Well, that last piece that you just shared, like, do I go back to the person and let them know? I always do. I think it's a good way to deepen trust in a relationship, connection in a relationship, because repair in relationship can be so powerful, or even just going back to say, here's why I didn't take it. So it's not about right or wrong, but being able to articulate why it wasn't aligned for me. And I heard you say, like, ooh, if there's like an emotional attachment, I find it really easy to either accept and take advice on board or say thank you, but not in this moment, if I'm able to share why it's misaligned with one of my values. So, courage, learning, and justice are my three core values. And if a piece of advice or a decision that gets made doesn't align with one of those three pretty clearly, I have so much confidence to be able to say, this is why this is disagreeable for me. And I think an example, when you said family, I'm like, oh, yes, with family, because there's so much emotion there. And I can remember when I shared with my family, I had made the decision to leave my full time job at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business to pursue being a business owner full time for Encourage Coaching. And I made that decision without telling them. And when I did, it was like, can you take back your resignation letter? Can you say I'd made a mistake? What are you doing? You're at one of the top business schools in the world. Why would you ever pursue something like this? And what I was able to do was really understand where they were coming from. My siblings are 14 to 20 years older than me, basically at the end of the baby boom. And my dad was at the start of the baby boom. And it was just, you don't take risks, you settle down, you take what's given to you, stay where you're at, you have a good thing going. Why are you trying to disrupt this? And I'm like, because they're capping my potential here. And there's no courage in staying. There's no learning for me in staying. There's no economic justice for me in staying here. And after the first year, when I was able to double my salary that I was earning at the university through the business, they're like, oh, we're really glad you didn't listen to us.
We've had a question there, and I think I agree entirely. I think family can have an agenda, so I think advice from family can be, and obviously you saw that, Katie. It's really biased because they're scared for you and they just want you to be happy, so they'll want you to take the easy route. And sometimes the best advice is to push yourself and to go out of your comfort zone. And I think sometimes people separated from you a little bit are better place to see that and to give advice that's more centered. And that's obviously the experience you had there, Katie, isn't it?
Yeah, it was objective advice from I had hired a business coach before I made this move. And he was the one who actually said, why are you trying to stay in a place that's capping your potential as a leader, as an earner, as someone with brilliance that they are not ready to hear yet? And it just was a paradigm shift for me.
Yeah.
And it felt so objective, like this person had no agenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting because I think if there's a big move like that, so I mean, I think all three of us run our own businesses now, but whatever it was that prompted us to do that, I think, when I started out, I took so many different forms of advice, whether it was from doing some research online, whether it was talking to people who had done the same thing, whether it was going out to networking communities and things like that, and speaking to a number of different people doing a lot of research. And all of that for me was advice. And then I think what happened to me was I took it all on board. I let it sort of percolate through. And then it was like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do with all of that advice. And then I almost needed somebody to say, right, if this is what you've decided to do, to almost give me a little bit of help, support, potentially advice on what I had decided. And from there, it then sort of morphed into mentoring and thinking about that. But so for me, it's, just really making sure that you're getting it from a number of different places. And there will be some people that are really rooting for you. I think there was some people who maybe you don't quite get on with, but they're going to give you different advice. And therefore, you have to listen to it. And then I think there's also, this different, I find as I am quite an empath and I have a lot of the characteristics that you would read about females in the corporate business environment. And so I tend to find that I have either females with more of a logical, less empathic mindset, or I have some very I've got some business colleagues who are male or presenters males who actually have a very different approach to me. And I do think that really helps with decisions if you're getting advice, from females, from males, from very, very different places.
Yeah, it's going to be much more rounded, isn't it? If you're getting opinions from lots of different places, and it's going to be much more objective for you to make a decision as to what feels right, rather than going down a path that you might have always gone down because you're taking advice from the same sorts of places. And sometimes we need to stretch and try different paths, don't we? So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, this brings up something that feels just omnipresent in our world today, which is generative AI and folks using ChatGPT or Claude for advice as a coach or a therapist, or what should I do in this situation? Can we talk about that? Because I have a perspective, but I'd like to hear both of yours first.
Such a great point, isn't it? Yeah.
It's interesting. Is there a difference between women or men asking for advice, receiving advice, and then you have to bring in now, don't you, the AI and And I have a friend who asks ChatGPT, and absolutely, ChatGPT is a male for them. It's her male therapist and her male coach, and she's taken on that persona and believes that the advice that is coming is from that. Sorry, Georgie, I think you're going to say something.
Just reminded me of something someone said to me only in the last couple of weeks. Their ChatGPT is my friend. It's my friend now. And people have said to me, why do I need to employ a coach? Why do I need a therapist? I can just ask Chat. And it's that thing. But do you understand how Chat and AI and Claude and all of them work? They are an echo chamber. They are what you put in there. And it's trying to get that across, isn't it? But because it comes across and it can seem like your friend, it can give you answers back that you want to hear. It can make you feel better in that instant because it's affirming everything you say. And it can take you down a very dangerous path, I believe.
It's so dangerous. Lorraine, go.
Yes. No, I was just going to say that's really interesting. You said it's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And yet we're talking about advice. And actually, sometimes when we get advice, it's not what we want to hear at all. Or it comes from a place that it's really not what we want to hear. And do we ever put into Claude, give me advice and then give me the different perspective, which, when you're working with somebody on a one-to-one base, you probably would get different perspectives. But with something like a large language model, a large learning model, we would have to actually ask for that other perspective to help with the advice. So I don't know if that helps, Katie, in terms of your perspective.
I love that so much as like a tip and tool for anyone using it, and just a different perspective, whether it's advice or anything, like a different perspective on how to approach this business plan or this pitch. Or I think I just worry about the dangers for us as women. Georgie, to your point, the large language models are trained on what exists in the world, right? And what exists in the world was primarily created by men and the engineers who are doing the code and creating these models are predominantly male, which I think really is dangerous for women because it doesn't take into account our experience, our perspective. I mean, even just thinking about college syllabi, right? And what's being taught, it's just been in recent years, we've been seeing a diversification of that. And so is there actually enough diversity in the way these models have been trained to be able to give different perspectives, even when we ask for it? And so I don't know. In Q1, I took an executive education course through Wharton on the future of work. And there are these brilliant folks, senior HR leaders from across the globe. And this one particular classmate was talking about the implementation of AI coaching for senior leaders. And she said they were so angry that they had wasted their time being forced to do this when it clearly had no idea of context. Lorraine, to your point, the human piece around having emotion, being able to experience empathy, not just perform empathy, Georgie, like I think you were saying, it's telling us what we want to hear and making us feel good because it can be sycophantic in that way.
The thing as well is you've got to know the right, I'm not suggesting anyone should use it for coaching, but for any purpose that you use AI, you've got to know the right questions to ask it. And if you're in a coaching session, you're trained coach will know what you mean when you're asking something out and will bring you round to the right point. AI can't do that. And the advice it can come back with can be, I've heard some horror stories of what it can tell you. It's a scary situation.
I think it is scary. But actually, to one of your points there about you have to know what to ask AI when you're asking for advice or for coaching, I think you also have to be able to, when you are a woman asking for advice in the corporate world, I think you also have to work out how you are going to pitch that question and how you're going to make sure that you're getting what you, not necessarily what you want, because advice could be anything when you ask a question, but making sure that you are asking for what you need and then hearing and listening to what comes back. Because I think so often we think we're asking for one thing, but it might get interpreted differently. So actually, although if you're talking to people, it's not the same as talking to AI, I still think that principle around advice is really thinking about what is it that you want or need from somebody else and making sure you're asking the right question around that. When you're with a person, if you're not quite getting what you need, you can ask again and you can come back with a different perspective and a different question. With AI, I think it's a little bit more scary and a little bit more worrisome.
It is, and you can often tell in the person with body language, can't you, if they're getting you or not. But it is a very valid point that as a woman, we're constantly having to think of how it's going to land with the other person. And I don't know if necessarily, I'm not a man, so I don't know, but I don't know necessarily that they have to think in that same way. Whereas we really have to think about how is this going to land? Is this what I really need? And have that knowledge beforehand. Yeah,
Is it we have to think about it? And Katie, maybe you'll have a view on this, but is it we have to think about how it lands, or just because that's the way we are, we do think about it more than maybe other people?
I think there does, as women, we do have to have a strategy around it, right? And being very specific about what it is we're asking for in terms of feedback and why. So I've had so many clients who identify as women who say, I ask for advice. I ask for feedback all the time from my boss, from my peers. And what I get is they're like, you're doing fine. Keep doing what you're doing. And I said, well, what were you looking for feedback on? And it was, I want to get promoted. So my hope would be that they would tell me how to do that. I'm like, well, let's ask it in a different way. And we have to be very specific, whether it's AI or whether it's a human, right? Because we are being inundated, Lorraine, to your point from 10, 15 minutes ago, with so much information, and there's so much going on that unless we're really giving someone something to focus on, we're not going to get something very specific back. And so being able to say, I know that in order to get to the next level of leadership, I have to improve my presentation skills. The next time there's an opportunity to present, will you give me that opportunity, and then look for ways for me to improve, right? To be able to be at the level that I need to be at. And I think instead of just asking for feedback more generally, which can start to feel like a mental sedative for our peers and bosses, getting very specific and almost having two approaches: a clear, concrete ask for an opportunity, and then feedback when we step up to the plate for that opportunity.
Do you think as women, because I see it a bit, do you think as women we find it harder to ask for anything, let alone advice, because we think we should just be able to know it all somehow magically? I see so many women who think, well, I should just know this. I should just be able to do it. Other people can manage it. Why can't I? Do you think as women we experience that a little bit, where we don't ask because we fear either the answer or fear being looking like we're stupid, for want of a better word?
Oh, I don't know. Is that a little bit of imposter syndrome? Maybe I don't know on that. I mean, I've met all different types of women, I would suggest. Some that maybe fall into that category, but I've equally met some who very much will ask for what they want, and they're very much, they're out there and they will go for it. Now, whether that is fake it till you make it, or whether that is genuinely who they are, or if they've had advice on how to do it, I don't know. So it's a very interesting question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that one.
I would say there's probably, at least in the States, a socialization around women not having wants or needs. And so if we express a want or need, it becomes disagreeable. And folks might not be able to articulate why, but it can often prevent a reward and instead elicit a consequence. There was a labor economics study on what women get rewarded for in work that I learned about through a course at the Barcelona School of Economics. And it showed women who meet gender norms, right, as they're established. So we're caregivers, we're supporters, we're listeners, we're really trying to lift up those around us. Those behaviors and practices get rewarded. And when we don't meet those gender norms and show up in ways that are assertive or self-promoting, we get punished for that, right? So one of the ideas that came out of that research was to say, chances are if I need something and if I want something, other women in my org need and want that too. How am I bringing this to the attention of my boss, to the leadership team as a collective instead of just about me? Now, do I believe we should have to do that? Absolutely not. But is it a winning strategy? What the research shows is that it is.
I wonder, what's the best piece of advice you've been given? I mean, I think we're all similar in terms of at the moment we're doing our own thing. So what's the best piece of advice you've been given as you know, either whilst you were in corporate or now as you're doing your own thing? What would you say is the best piece of advice? Georgie?
Ooh, ooh. That's a tough question. It's got to be around, and I've talked about it, the self-trust and learning to understand who I am, because that takes you forward in every aspect of your life. It's like knowing your values. Katie, you mentioned your values earlier on. Knowing your values, knowing who you are helps in every decision that you make in your life. It's your guiding star, isn't it? Knowing who you are, so when people do offer the advice, you know what's right for you and what's not for you. And if you know yourself, you know what your goals are and what you want to move towards and what makes your life happy. So I think for me, it's about having that belief in yourself and, well, knowing yourself firstly, and then having the belief in that and the confidence in that.
What about you, Katie?
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was actually from a student when I was working at the University of Chicago. And I had just finished running a workshop, and he stopped by my office afterward and was like, "Hey, can I offer some feedback?" And I thought it was pretty bold, right? And so I'm like, yes, please. And we were really focused on soft skills and leadership. I'm like, this is a great opportunity for this student to practice giving and receiving feedback. And he said, I know that, and he said, he's like, you've said to us you were not hired here for your business acumen. You were hired here for your understanding of human development, human need, belonging, listening. Why are you trying to teach us about things that we can get in every other class? Teach us about what you know and filter it through the lens of work and business and why things like listening matters and what it really is and why belonging matters and how you can achieve it. We don't need what we're getting in all the other classes from you. We need something different. So just be you. And it took me a while to really take that on board, but it's what has allowed me to excel in my business now.
What about you, Lorraine? So I've had a couple of pieces of advice that have really stuck with me, and my business now is helping people, whether it's via change adoption, whether it's learning. There's many different things that I do, but one very early on, when I was sort of in the training room, in the classroom, whatever you want to call it, I was quite worried because it was the first time I had gone from being an in-house L&D professional to actually being on the vendor side, and I was then being paid, if you like, to be in that room. Even though I was being paid in the corporate, it just didn't feel the same. And somebody just said to me, they did sort of a piece of work with me where they put me in the position of how I was feeling before going in there, then trying to put myself into the shoes of the people that were in the room. And actually, they just wanted to learn from somebody that was an expert or had different knowledge to them about the topic. And the minute I was given that advice to really put yourself in those shoes and think about how you could support them rather than worry about your own perspective, that was really, really helpful for me. And it's something I've carried with me my whole sort of career. And then the other piece that has stuck with me as I've been building my own business has been not quite sure what fine is it will all be fine, but not quite sure what fine looks like right now. And it's absolutely okay to go with that flow. And that advice, it's taken a while for me to get there, but now I've got there, it's been super helpful.
Amazing. So I think for me, it's been a fabulous chat. Thank you so much to both of you for being here with me. It's been so great to talk to you and think about advice. It's been so interesting to think for me what advice means for me. I think you mentioned it at the start, Katie, I'm a coach. I'm trained not to be giving advice. Really, we have to stay well away from advice. So it may seem like, what are you doing on a podcast talking about advice? And it's been really useful to think about what advice really means to me. And I think actually it can be really, really helpful, can't it? And it certainly has its place because we're not islands. We can't do everything on our own. We need other people's opinions, but learning to trust ourselves is still, and I know I've talked about it a lot, but it's still probably the most important thing, so that we can take the advice from other people and work out what's the best for us.
Sure. I mean, I know I wouldn't have got to where I got to in my career, and I wouldn't have done the things I've done without advice from so many different people. Most of it was wanted advice. Sometimes I had to hear it, and then it was like, okay, I'll take that on board and do something with it, maybe rebelling a little bit in between. But I think, and I think for me now in where I am in my career, if I have the opportunity to pay it forward, and if somebody asks for my advice, or if I believe it's useful, then I always try to pay it forward, because I think for me, it's been so useful for me. And especially now in the world of AI, and especially with, where we are in terms of the economy and people trying to get their first jobs. If there's anything that we can do to give advice in a way that somebody else wants to hear it, that will help them in their career, then I firmly believe in that as well.
I'm going to go ahead and +1 what both of you have shared. I have no additional value to add here. I think great summaries all around.
Great. Well, thank you for such a lovely chat.
Amazing. Thank you.
We love that this episode started with our guests talking about podcasts and then changed it to discussing AI, and then ironically sharing some great advice. It's okay not to take other people's advice, and sometimes it's better to listen to your own mind, and you know what's best for you. An enormous thank you to Lorraine, Georgie and Katie for sharing their personal thoughts and offering valuable tips. You'll find their details, as always, along with links mentioned in the show notes. We are still looking for guests for upcoming episodes, and if you'd like to find out more, then please do get in touch. Again, all the details are in the show notes. Remember to like and subscribe. It does make a difference to help people find and recommend us. And we're back in a couple of weeks, and next time it's The Adaptive One. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again soon.